So confrontation and self-disclosure. Another way I have of thinking about my work with patients these days a lot is in terms of enactments. So my sense is that enactments, as I think I said earlier, can be both our greatest resource and the greatest obstacle to therapeutic progress. And so I think we need to pay attention, with a dismissing, a preoccupied, all of our patients, to what is the drama, the psychodrama, the mini psychodrama that's being played out where your attachment patterns and your patient's attachment patterns intersect. And so my experience with these patients is that there's three, I'm sure there's more than three, but there's three standout enactments. And I think the way that we enact our role in relation to the dismissing patient's devaluation or idealization or efforts to seize control, the way we react has a great deal to do with the particular state of mind with respect to attachment in which we are presently lodged. So I'm going to lay this out sort of very schematically, but I hope it's helpful. Devaluation, I think, is a specialty of a certain breed of someone in a dismissing state of mind. Obviously devaluation, I think, can be seen as a particular, what should I say, a habit of patients who we might describe as narcissistic. And I think the therapist who encounters the patient, well, first of all, let's try to clarify something so that we can all empathize with these very unpleasant, not necessarily, but to be the target of devaluation is generally unpleasant. And so understanding the motivation for the devaluation, I think, is quite helpful. And my sense is that someone in a dismissing state of mind requires what Bowlby calls a sense of, how does he describe it? These are folks who are compulsively self-reliant. And it's difficult to be self-reliant if you don't feel like you are great and self-sufficient and don't really need much. It's hard to feel self-reliant if you're feeling vulnerable and weak and needy, obviously. And so one of the ways in which I think you avoid the experience of the impulse to attach to a stronger and or wiser other is to decide that you're actually with a weaker and less wise other. I think that the devaluation it's another form of protection from the impulse to attach. It's a way of turning down the volume on our need to attach. So the dismissing patient who leads with devaluation. I think of a patient I saw for the first time probably 3 weeks ago. And how did he begin? He began by saying something like, no, here's a better example. Here's a great example. This is the first patient I ever saw at the Wright Institute Clinic in Berkeley in 1972. And this patient said, he walked in the door and he said, I really don't expect to get much from you. He said, I cried in Laura Pearl's office for 3 hours and it did absolutely nothing for me. So that's the patient who leads with devaluation, I think affects us quite differently if we're in a dismissing state of mind, a preoccupied state of mind. Those are the states of mind I'm going to be concentrating on. So the therapist in a dismissing state of mind tends to fight fire with fire. And so this is a therapist who privately will be utterly dismissing in relation to such a patient. This guy's crazy, what a schmuck. Privately. or the therapist may interpret in ways that have an edge. A colleague of mine, Michael Shiner, described this as, this is a kind of interpretation that adds insight to injury. So the point is that somebody the therapist in a dismissing state of mind meets the devaluation with reciprocal devaluation. Or such a therapist may simply withdraw emotionally. And that's not constructive. The preoccupied therapist, whose attachment behavioral system needs to be chronically activated, tends to think badly of himself, tends to locate the center of gravity in other people who tend to be seen as important, and oh my God, I don't want that person to abandon me or not to like me or whatever. And so the preoccupied therapist can feel crushed by the devaluation, or or the preoccupied patient can kind of go along with or privately agree with the devaluation and wind up feeling utterly disarmed. And that's not helpful either. So I think what I found useful is to find a way to talk about the devaluation, but in a fashion that doesn't leave the patient feeling attacked or overly exposed. And so the language that I have come to use is to say something like, I'm aware that it's extraordinarily difficult for you to let me matter to you at all. I think it's really hard for you to let me have any importance to you. And that way of talking, I have found people can hear. I think it tends to, it evokes their interest.